Good evening, Gapstars, and welcome to day 2 of Explorer Expanded, where we are exploring new opportunities from meeting industry experts from multiple domains, discovering Web 3.0, deciphering the Metaverse, and much, much more. Now, we had an exciting day 1, and now it's time for an even more exciting day 2, where we'll be learning about things like the Metaverse. Yes, where you can live out your dreams, have a new life with no petrol queues, no more power cuts. I mean, screw gas. We would just pick out hot dogs from a tree and eat it. Or salmon and paripu, if you're one of those Hatanamalakshi losers, and that's your jam. Yeah. Life in the Metaverse would actually be better than present life here in Sri Lanka. I have to go to a gas polling after this. I would definitely take that over this. Anyway, on to more happier things. Now, life here at Gapstars is definitely better than the Metaverse. I mean, a salary pegged to the euro. Not even the dollar, okay, euro. And now apparently there's a rumor circling around that they are also going to provide solar panels for its employees because they care about them so much. So in case you're a talented coder out there who wants to get away from these annoying like power cuts, join Gapstars. That was a paid HR advertisement. Now let's get back to our regular programming. Now, like yesterday, we have a few housekeeping rules, right? Housekeeping rule number 1, your mic will be automatically muted in case you forget to mute yourself, you know, and your wife or husband walks in and decides to do a bit of a jiggy-biggy and, you know, we hear it. So we muted you all. Shh. You can communicate with us and our speakers using the chat box, yes. Type questions into the Q&A box. Now I know that we have an amazing education and political system in this country that conditions you to not ask questions, make things normal, but please, you know, don't be shy. Lajja wenna epa, baya nathuwa ඕන ප්‍රශ්නයක් අහන්න. Number 4, engage with us. Now please, you may use the reaction emojis, but please refrain from using the poop emoji at all times, okay? Number 5, you can win goodies. Be part of our social media giveaway by taking a picture or video or, you know, doing any story or whatever of your favorite EX moment, okay? Or Explore Expanded moment and not your favorite X's moment, right? Please don't share pictures or videos of your ex. That's super weird. Don't do that, right? So do that because you stand a chance to win something. And number 6, keep it friendly, all right? All right, with that, it is time to kick off the conference with our first speaker for the evening. He is the practice lead for XR and 3D at Boston Consulting Group. He has over 13 years of experience in extended reality. All right. Give it up for Mukundan Govindaraj.
Probably never had such an introduction with so much energy and excitement, and you have already set the stage on fire. Thanks for that wow back pop there over there. So let me quickly go back to sharing my screen. Can someone help me with sharing rights, because it says participant sharing is not possible. Yeah. Can someone confirm if they could see the screen? Probably yes in the chat, or probably, oh yes, I see some messages.
Yes, we can.
Awesome, awesome. All right. Without further ado, let's get started. First of all, I'm super thrilled to be part of Gapstars Explorer Expanded 2022 program. And what's more exciting is to talk about Metaverse to some of the most innovative minds who are attending this session right now, which is you, and who's going to make the future more eco-friendly. Metaverse. I'm sure you've heard this probably in your social media feeds, probably from your friends, colleagues, or in some of the newsletters. And you're going to keep hearing this word, at least for the next few years, whether you like it or not. So what is this Metaverse? What does it mean to you or to your company? What are some of the successful use cases around this? How do we enter the Metaverse? Well, these are some top questions which we are going to find answers for in the next 25 minutes. As a first step, I'm going to share a quick consolidated video where some of the global leaders are going to define what is metaverse according to them.
Ooh, what is the metaverse?
It's some made-up thing that people just keep talking about.
It's a cool concept that's come out. You know, I think it's definitely a little groundbreaking, a little scary.
Everything that connects in some way is considered the metaverse.
But you can make it whatever you want it to be.
The metaverse means different things to different people.
It's really knowledge.
Futuristic.
Compelling.
Revolutionary.
3D.
The metaverse is everything.
The metaverse is ever-changing.
The metaverse is a virtual world.
A place where you can go and engage in multiple realities.
The next evolution of the internet from 2D into 3D immersive experiences.
It's going to enable an alternate reality for the future digital marketplace.
It's the next evolution of data, visualizing it in a different way.
It allows you to pretty much think of what you can do prior to actually doing it.
You can see it, you can touch it, you could do way more with it.
Everything we've been dreaming about as geospatial professionals is actually finally here.
It has the highest potential for making a difference on the planet.
Its advances in technology can help serve humanity.
With the metaverse, we can understand the experiences of other people.
I'm excited because we can fuse so much data together in time and space in an immersive environment, so we can do anything.
All that you heard about metaverse is true, and it's much beyond that. It's an evolving concept which is impossible to define with precision. So what I've done here is I've clustered all the technologies together, which is part of metaverse, and I'm presenting to you as 3 buckets. The first and foremost thing is the immersive technologies. Currently, we deal with digital data in a 2-dimensional format. We use our smartphones, like you and I are right now on this call. We are on a Zoom call, which is still a flat 2-dimensional space. We use web browsers, whatever be it. That's the only means through which we access the 3-dimensional digital data. Imagine you talk to the data or you talk to your computer like you would talk to a person. And that is possible, and that is enabled by technologies like AR, VR, and MR. And these tech have been in the space for over a decade, and it has matured in its own way across domains. Then we have the M platforms or the metaverse platforms. These platforms unifies the data analytics and digital services, which includes search, social media, mobile, and digital ads, all coming together hand in hand as one single open and fully transparent architecture. Some examples are Sandbox, Decentraland, Roblox, Zepito. All these are some of the metaverse platforms, which is right now sustaining in a really good way. As a human, if you would want to go and enter these platforms, you create a digital version of yourself. He could either represent exactly the way you look like, or probably from your imaginations. And these are called the avatars. And through avatars, you enter these virtual worlds or the parallel universes, and you meet friends, you talk to new people, you can make new friends, and probably run businesses also there. Then, the economy of metaverse is predominantly run by using collectibles and NFTs, which is purely built on blockchain, and the cryptos, which are again another source of doing any transactions within the metaverse. And also NFTs are a great asset, which is currently being used as a source of investments too. XR has been, as I mentioned earlier, it's been there for over a decade. But if you notice, it had a massive growth in the last 2.5 years. And it is expected to hit more than $400 billion by 2025 and close to $1 trillion by 2030. So huge. The main factor which acted like the catalyst is the pandemic itself. During pandemic, a lot of companies were forced to revisit the way they function, the way they operate within their employees, day-to-day operations, working with clients, meeting new clients. Everything had to be revisited. And most of these connects happen in a remote manner where people are asked to work from home. So this definitely was a short turnaround to run the business, but on a long turnaround, it introduced a lot of gaps in their day-to-day protocols. Say, for example, while I'm presenting right now and connecting with you in a remote manner, I'm actually looking at the presentation while I'm talking to you. What is the most common thing which happens in a real world meetup is the eye contact. Am I looking at the camera like this? Are we looking at the camera like this while we have a Zoom presentation? We do not, because we have to focus somewhere else in the presentation so that I don't miss out these points. And so I'm already focused on my screen, but I'm not focused on you. And second thing is, I do not see you when I'm presenting in a virtual space. Imagine that I'm having the same presentation in one of the Metaverse platforms where I could wear a VR headset, or even without a headset, I can use a mobile platform as a basis to connect with you all and see how you would react. Or probably I could have the feeling that I am with you right now, though we are countries apart and continents apart. Beyond XR, as I mentioned earlier, it's not just XR, which is Metaverse. XR is part of the Metaverse. There are few other important drivers which is fueling the growth of Metaverse. The first and foremost thing is the social driver, which again, I'm going to go back to what happened during pandemic and which is still happening. We were forced to work, or probably we were forced to be isolated and continue our day-to-day life while we had to be in a 20 by 20 room. And while we were doing that, the human nature kicked in. It gave us the urge to go and meet new people. That's our human nature. We want to meet new people. We want to see people. We need to talk to them. That's the human nature. That was cut at its umbilical cord. So these M platforms or Metaverse platforms, they were providing amazing solutions out there, which kind of fueled people to go and create accounts and be part of these Metaverse platforms, especially Zeppito, Rec Room, Fortnite. So what people did there, they created an avatar of themselves. They invited their friends. They hanged out in these meta platforms. They played games together. They went to a virtual play mall and they played games and they just had fun. And also these platforms let you meet new people as well. Plus, apart from this, there is businesses which are being built, which are being done in the metaverses too. Now let's talk about the second set of drivers, which is the technology which is driving the growth of metaverse. Three major components. The first one is the most obvious one, which is the growth of hardware. The GPUs and the CPUs, which is the most important thing for any of these computer or digital content to work, they're becoming super powerful and they're becoming super compact and they become really affordable. The decentralized infrastructure, which was started like few years back, has become more robust and also has matured in such a way that you can onboard more people onto the decentralized spaces. A quick example, 13 million crypto wallets have been trading 25 billion worth NFTs in just the last couple of years. It's huge. So already the architecture is in place and it's working fine. And the third most important tech driver is the no-code, low-code architecture. The reason I have to stress on this is disrupting not just the metaverse, it is disrupting the way programming is being done globally. What initially demanded was a niche set of programmers and developers to work on XR or metaverse related applications. But now, with this no-code, low-code architecture, if you're a designer, if you are a financial analyst, if you're a strategist, or even if you are a program manager, it doesn't matter. With probably no knowledge of programming or with minimal knowledge of programming, you can actually start sculpting the metaverse. Here comes one of the most controversial question. Can DeFi and traditional banking coexist? Well, before we try answering this, DeFi is nothing but decentralized financing, which is an emerging financial technology which combines blockchain, digital assets, and all other financial services. Its protocol aims to eliminate the role for a trusted intermediary. Basically, they are trying to avoid the need for a bank when two parties make a transaction. It's big, it's massive. It started in the year 2019, where it was doing transaction worth close to $1 billion. In just 2 years, they are currently doing transactions for $236 billion. I'm sorry, I just slipped the word. $236 billion. It's massive. All right. A few years back, there was blockchain, which came into picture. Initially, banks, when they looked at it, they were a little skeptical. Oh man, this is new technology. It's not going to work. But if you see, in the last few years, the banks have started to embrace blockchain as a tech. Several banks, we have worked with several banks who have actually embedded blockchain as part of their service offering. DeFi, which is just a brainchild of blockchain, is not far away from this pipeline. So I just expect that DeFi over a period of time is also going to exist very closely with the traditional banks. So here are some few methods through which these banks can enter the space. So banks can work very closely with the policymakers in identifying how the DeFi characteristics can be maintained while they define the quality and the policies for all the API regulations that is required. Banks can also allow customers access to these blockchain ecosystem as part of their service offering. There are already a lot of banks which is doing it. They can definitely work with consultants, work with experts, and figure out those use cases and start working in that path. And the most important spectrum that we are supposed to understand here is the current generation of the spending population, which is the young generation who is ready to take that risk, and they are tech savvy. We should understand that spectrum of customers for whom we have to cater. So this particular audience, they are ready to take the risks, and they are super smart, and they are very happily diversifying the investments across the traditional physical real estates, virtual real estates, gold, and NFTs. They understand risks in NFTs and virtual currencies, but they are still ready to take that leap to make that investment. So as banks and as other financial bodies, they should be understanding, yes, there is audience who believe in this, and they should start fueling and building infrastructure in order to meet their demands. All right. In the next few slides, let's see some of the most successful use cases which happened in the last 2 years, especially in the metaverse. Dolce & Gabbana, they launched one of the most premium NFTs about their products, and each NFT, when a customer buys, a physical product gets shipped to them. They made a sale close to 5.7 million in just 2 weeks of running their campaign. If you look at a larger spectrum of brands, what they do is they buy a virtual piece of land, and they construct the 3D space of what they look as their brand is. So you may not be able to build such a building in real world, but they take the brand colors, take the brand guidelines, and build a virtual 3D space, which is so colorful and so beautiful that There's no way you can make something like that in real world. Say, for example, Louis Vuitton did something like that. And as a fan, as a loyal fan, as a loyal customer, I get an invite to enter the space. I get closer to the brand. I get to enjoy a bit of the brand's legacy. I can buy, I can share invites to my friends, and they have hangout sessions. Plus, they have a customer execution as well there. So while all these things are happening together, Gucci launched an amazing virtual bag which cost $4,000 while their actual bags were only selling for $3,500. In just 2 weeks, they made a sale close to over $1 million. And during the entire campaign period, they had 19 million visitors. It's huge. I'm going to share a couple of more examples. I think we might be running a bit late. Wendy's, on the other hand, they partnered with Fortnite. Fortnite, by now, you must be aware that it's one of the most sought after multiplayer game next to PUBG. So Wendy's, they partnered with Fortnite in running a completely metaverse campaign against frozen beef. This garnered a lot of footfalls in their social media page, and it created a much more glorified brand value itself. How do we prepare as a brand, as an individual? How do we prepare to enter the metaverse? I put together 7 steps, which all begins with defining your goals. The first and foremost thing is to identify, why am I going to enter the metaverse? What is the driving need for me to enter, or for my business to enter the metaverse? I try to build my story on top of this and define the brief. And then I try to understand who's the target audience. Who am I catering to? I try to build the persona. I try to define the persona. I deconstruct the persona of the target audience. And then, basis on what I'm going after and basis on what my customers need, I try to identify the use cases. There are already some successful use cases which we can always piggyback on, or you try to identify the gap in your business or in the process that you're doing right now, and then construct your use case. The most important thing here, once you have defined the use case, well, before you build the metaverse, is to partner with the right audience, partner with the right companies who can help you build the metaverse. There are some niche skills which is definitely required. You need some blockchain experts, 3D artists, some programmers, full stack developers. You try to identify what is the infrastructure apart from this, the hardware and the softwares or the platforms that you would need. You identify, you make sure you have all of this ready, because this is a new path as a company you're going to take. So it's always good to be prepared. And once you're prepared, and while you're preparing, I would also suggest to consider some readily available out-of-the-shelf platforms like Fortnite, Sandbox, or Decentraland. This will quickly, as a company, it will, with a lesser cost, it can quickly take you to enter the metaverse. Once, if you feel like, you can also test all these use cases with your end consumers and see if it's actually beneficial for you. You can do all the dry runs, testing until you're all satisfied, until the business is satisfied. And if needed, you can always build your own metaverse from scratch. You please prioritize the launch. And while you do it, it's very important that you run campaigns around what you're doing so that your end users or your target audience is well equipped with why you are entering the metaverse. And they also are quickly equipped with the right information through videos or through tutorials around how to be in the metaverse, how to enjoy the benefits that you are providing to your customers. Well, that comes to a little bit of your end, and this is how you begin your metaverse journey. I would like to cover, before I end this session with some questions which I'm open to answer, I would want to present or talk a bit more about these four main building blocks of Metaverse. As a business owner, as an architect, as a designer, or as an end user, you may have different perspective towards what you need in the metaverse. You definitely need to address all these thoughts together. Probably you may have to have few ideation sessions or design thinking workshops, identify the current pain points, and then you go after creating the requirements for the infrastructure. While you do that, it's very important to break it down into these four main building blocks. The first one is the hardware. So as I told you earlier, Metaverse is beyond XR, beyond M platforms. It's beyond NFTs, right? It's probably bigger than that. So you can come with a device agnostic way of building solutions. What I mean by that is you can build one great experience, one unanimous experience, which would be same across either you are wearing a VR headset, either you're using your mobile screen or you're using a laptop. It doesn't matter. The experience is going to be unanimous, almost the same. So you define what are the headsets or what are the target hardwares that you're going to use for. And it's also very important that in Metaverse, you can define the level of immersiveness. Do you want your end users to be completely immersed? When I say completely immersed, you can take control of what he sees, you can take control of what he hears, you can take control of what he senses or smells. All this is possible in the metaverse. You can go define the level of immersiveness in the experience that you're creating. And secondly, the second most important thing is the content itself. What is the content or the experience that you're trying to create? What is the main purpose of it? Is it purely for entertaining your end users? Or is it to build a consumer engagement module so that you can engage or socialize with your consumers, or probably let the consumers socialize among themselves? Or is it going to be a utility? Is it going to be a tool that you want your end consumers to make use of in the metaverse? Or it could be anything for that matter, or it could be a mix of all these things. Then comes the platform. The reason I'm calling it a platform is it's a construct, right? You can build this platform. I'm not talking about the readily available end platform, the entire infrastructure, right? So you identify what OS you are looking for, and then you also keep a check on whether do you want to use artificial intelligence. How do you visualize the data that the users are generating? Do you want a data visualization platform? Do you want, what should be the cloud infrastructure that is required? What should be the support that you need? What should be defining the backend team who has to be supporting you on these things? What should be the level of access you should be providing to your end users? All these things have to be defined as part of platform. And when it comes to monetization, right now, blockchain is used predominantly the most common way. They also use traditional means of making payments. That is also happening, but parallelly, a lot of adoption is happening using cryptos and NFTs. All right, that lands us to the end of the session. There is a lot more, and this is what our presented so far is just the beginning. I hope it would have scratched your brain to think a little bit more about what is this metaverse all about. You can always follow me on LinkedIn. You can ask your questions through Gapstars or directly to me. I'd be more than happy to help you. Thank you, and see you in Metaverse very soon.
A big thank you to Mukundan for that very, very insightful session. Wow, I didn't understand anything. But thank you, Mukundan. Thank you so much for that very insightful session. Now, before we move on to our second speaker, we would like to look at a small recap of what happened yesterday at day one. So we have a small video for you.
Welcome to Explore Expanded 2022, everyone. Let's get this party started.
Everyone, sing it with me. All right, that was a recap of day one. Wow, what a nice video. Whoever made that, kudos. Really nice. You make me look really good in that video. Thanks. Now, our second speaker for today is a technology enthusiast who's passionate about his work and all forms of technology with over 15 years experience in technology space. His area of expertise lies in API and large-scale web application development and its related constellation of technologies and processors. As a technical co-founder of Instawell.com, he developed a self-help platform written in PHP and Node.js that gave comfort to thousands of users across the world. As of late, he has primarily been working on service-based architectures on the AWS cloud. Outside of work, he's a Dota freak with over 10,000 hours played in the multiplayer Dota world, and he is still very average at it, apparently. So he likes helping people and was so active on Stack Overflow for quite a bit, less now. And he is still in the top 5 users by reputation on Stack Overflow for Sri Lanka and top 0.5% overall. God, what a nerd. He co-founded a mental health startup that connected over 100,000 people to volunteer talk therapists and counselors in 2015. He is here to speak on preparing for system failure. Yeah. So we hope a certain failed individual, the Hondatamagaravu individual, tunes in, and also his government also tunes in for this session because it's very important for them to learn how to prepare for system failure. Give it up for our second speaker for the day, John Pereira, or Mark Henry as they call him.
Thanks, Gehan, for all those kind words. Absolutely, all of that is true. And yeah, I hope more people from the government are tuning in. Maybe they'll get a few pointers. So we're going to be talking about preparing for system failure and how we rolled out our solution for system failure and preparing for system failures at Rentman. And we're not going to go into too much detail on incident management systems themselves, but we're going to just go look at our approach and the learnings that we had. So a little bit about me. Apart from everything that Gehan said, I basically blog on random coding, and you can also find me tweeting memes and things on JoeManLK on Twitter. So if you want to reach out, just follow me, and you'll find some interesting pieces in there. And a little bit about Rentman. Rentman is a resource management and planning software for the AV and event industry. They've been an industry leader in rental management for the events industry for a while now, and they just celebrated their 10th year in the event space just last year. We have customers across 75 countries, and we have 70+ employees across North America, Europe, and Sri Lanka. Our tech stack is primarily on AWS. We're multi-region, multi-zone, and we're basically running on top of AWS ECS. And we use a lot of Atlassian products as well. It's important that the reason I mention it is because it's important to know what we run on, because our plan and everything that we work on is based on our own experiences and our own internal tooling. So right now we are in the introduction area, and then we'll just go through the approach, which will have a lot more details, and then quick summary with learnings. So why now for Rentman? Why not earlier? Why not wait a little more? The main thing is, we're coming out of COVID quarantine time. So now we have a lot more people having events. If you're involved with the event scene in Europe, you're sure to know that there's a lot more events, large events being planned and happening across most of the world. So all of those events need software to run and manage all of their inventory, manage all of their crew, their rentals, and Rentman is a big part of that. So for us, as we come out of COVID, we are growing quite fast, and we are basically taking on a lot of new customers who haven't been really active in the last couple of years. So growth is a big factor for us, and that's why we really want to go into that right now. And with growth, obviously everyone knows, you have growing pains. Parts of our infrastructure can have problems, stresses, and we want to reduce all of that. We want to make the team just be able to handle the actual solution development rather than going after spending a lot of the valuable time on just dealing with fires. We also want to increase our bust factor. For those who don't know, bust factor in short is how many people in your company need to be hit by a bus before they go bust. So we want to increase it. Right now, we're at around 3-4 people for our critical infrastructure. We definitely want to have that spread across multiple countries and multiple people, and improve our bus factor there. We also don't want to deal with a lot of institutional knowledge being lost as people move on, as people grow and go into different roles. During COVID, there wasn't that much movement, and in this case now, as things are settling down again, or as people are accepting for things for how they are, there's going to be a lot of movement. So we don't want all of that information stuck in people's heads to be lost when they move on to different challenges. So we want to keep that internal, and we want to keep that inside the organization. And we also want to increase our monitoring coverage. We already have employees in North America, and we have some people coming in South America as well, Europe, and then Sri Lanka. So what we really want to do is make sure that as we switch time zones, we have coverage in each of those areas so that we have larger coverage. What is an incident response plan? The definition here is an incident response plan is a document that outlines an organization's procedures, steps, and responsibilities of its incident response program. Basically, what all that means is when something bad happens, what should be done by whom? You need that written down, and you need that played out so that everyone has an idea of what they want to do. You shouldn't be thinking about, what do I do now? If that is the case and you're already facing an incident, that's a bad plan, or at least a lack of a plan. You want a well-defined framework to deal with these incidents, and there shouldn't be any ambiguity. There shouldn't be any question of, am I the one who should be doing this, or is someone else supposed to come in? Nothing like that. It should be clear, and everyone should have an idea. We should also have a clear command structure. Who do you report to? Who reports to you? If someone parallel to your command structure comes in, you need to know the information that you can pass on to them clearly and without any problem. And this is based on the incident command system, which is a much larger framework that is built to handle incidents in the scope of things like earthquakes and wildfires, and that last over multiple months. In this case, we are looking at scoped events that handle around maybe a couple of days at worst, but usually not more than that. Most of our outages at Rentman have been within the other range. We've had issues where we need to go and fix them later on, but we are able to mitigate any problems with the customers very quickly. The 3 C's here for the system coordinate the response effort. As soon as something happens, make sure that all teams respond, or the teams that need to respond. Make sure that you communicate between those teams and make sure that everyone who needs to know about that information and what is going on is prepped, and that information also goes out to all the stakeholders externally. And you also want to maintain control of the incident itself. You don't want it to go out of hand. You don't want it to get out of control. You want to make sure that you have control of it. Your customers are then not panicking about what is going on internally. This is the approach. So, well, not this itself. This is how to draw an owl. But you generally want a little more detail between these two steps. You want to lay out what you want to do. You want to make sure that you run through them. You want to simulate it. So make sure you don't set up something like this, but make sure you put in some detail and plan it. And that is how you generally set up an incident response framework. So here what we're going to do is we're going to run through what we did, and we're going to run through what the approach that we used. Step one, step zero, documentation. And it's not a typo that I wrote documentation again. You really, really, really need to make sure everything is in some kind of documentation framework that you use. For example, we use Jira quite a lot, Atlassian quite a lot. So we have all of that information in Confluence and in Jira tickets. So in our case, what we started with was we started documenting all of the alerts that can actually come into the system. And then we documented what could be the reason for it and what should we be doing about it. We also made sure that we put in some helpful information, make it easy to read. You don't have to be like a programmer who's involved in the system to actually understand what is going on. When that error comes up, someone should be able to open up Bible, open up to the correct the title, figure out what they need to do. It doesn't need to be a programmer or a product manager or product owner who needs to go and action it. Anyone who is in that, who finds the incident first, will be able to go on to the next steps. Then you basically set up the teams and all of the organizational support. For us, we basically went with 2 tiers of teams who can respond to outages. The first tier are people who are not technical, but they could be people who can add more coverage for our monitoring. So generally, we have a lot of automated monitoring, but it's also good to have some people in there also looking at what is going on and being able to report and then figure out, does this need to be escalated? That'll improve your coverage because then not all of your developers will need to be on call. You can also have people like graphics designers or product owners, managers, anyone who's willing and within your on-call organization who can help out here. I'll get into that a little bit more later on. So this is the incident response phases. You generally have a triage phase. You figure out what is going on. You then figure out whether it is a heavy issue or not. Then you coordinate, figure out who needs to be involved. Then you go and fix it. And the fix itself could be something long-term, could be something short-term. Then you deploy the fix. And then you basically have the learnings, your root cause analysis, your the postmortems, all of that go into that place. So we're now going to run through the actual flow. So this is quite a lot of detail. I've broken this down so we can have a look at how it actually breaks down. It's not too complicated. It's pretty easy. Some common terms to get through first. IC is for incident commander, the person who's in charge. CL is the comms lead, the person who makes sure that everyone who needs to know about any situation is briefed. And they basically make sure that updates are put out on a timely basis. The lead investigator is someone that is basically making sure that the investigation continues. Sometimes the lead investigator and the incident commander could all be the same. Generally, it could just be even one person handling all of these roles depending on your team size. But the lead investigator is a little different than the incident commander because the incident commander is going to be handling the response itself and the investigator is going to be dealing with the technical solution. And then you have the domain specialist. Sometimes the actual issue that is breaking is completely separate from the general code base. So you may need a domain specialist for that, and you get those people in. So this step is basically something that you generally want to do right away. You need to find out what is going on. Is the error a big error? Is it a small error? So we categorize them as P1s, P2s, and P3s. P1s are high priority. Customers are impacted in a big way, and there is no workaround. P2s and P3s are smaller. You can basically have workarounds. Maybe it's only a subset of customers that are affected, but you need to make sure you categorize it, because then you can decide how much resources you want to apply to this problem. So if it is a P2 or a P3, you generally go with working on the solution using during a sprint. And if it is a P1, you generally want to drop everything. This is an all-hands kind of situation. The information could be coming in from user reports, monitoring, and different sources that you may have. If it is coming in solely from user reports all the time, that may be a problem for you, because that means customers are already impacted. You want to make sure that your automated systems, the monitoring systems, detect these things beforehand. We use Pingdom, CloudWatch, and Sentry quite a bit. All of those feed into Slack and into our monitoring softwares, which will then trigger these alerts. For example, we use OpsGenie, and that will then take care of funneling all of this information and then giving it and showing it to whoever is monitoring the system in one area, so that you can figure out what is going on. And the flow actually for that would look like this. Once you identify an incident, what happens is OpsGenie would basically create the issue automatically in Jira. So now you have the log, and that will then be useful later on when we need to decide, when we are working on the RCA, the root cause analysis. And in this case, the timings, what is going on, who's working, all of those are very important. So automate as much of this as you can, but also keep in mind, if your infrastructure is going down, some of the automation that you rely on may also be going down. So take that into account. So the tier 1 responder starts the investigation. They look at the Bible or the playbook, figure out, is this something that needs to be escalated right away? Is this something that goes on, gets fixed automatically or not? If it is a P2 or a P3, it means it's low impact, and we can basically handle it in the sprint framework. You can also just wait until, it could be like 3 a.m. in the morning, and you could wait a few hours for devs to come online and then pass this issue on to them, and then they can handle it. Now, this is not too bad. P2, P3 basically is not too bad on the company. Even the customers may not be affected. But if it's a P1, then you basically have to coordinate the response. And that's where we're here now. You want to use tooling, and you need to figure out who's available, who needs to be alerted, how they're alerted, and you also need feedback on who's actually acknowledged the issue. You may be sending out alerts to 10 people, but who's actually coming online? You need to make sure that you track all of that. And for us, we use OpsGenie for scheduling and for the alerting. And we also use Slack and SMS. Depending on your company culture, people may not have Slack on their phone, but they'll obviously have SMS. They'll obviously have push notification support. So make sure whatever tooling that you're using is taking that into account as well. And then depending on whether the incident is say in the billing service, it could be a small incident, it could be something in the infrastructure. It could even just be Amazon AWS going down, and there's nothing much you can do. You need to make sure your teams are set up properly, and you need to make sure those teams are the ones who are called out and reached out to. And as long as you set up all those teams correctly in tools like OpsGenie, they will take care of handling all of those scheduling issues that you want to deal with. And the actual flow for this, contact the on-call engineer, and then the handover command to the engineer, because maybe the tier 1 person who's currently the incident commander is not the best person to handle it, and they can then hand it over to the on-call engineer. On-call engineer is just going to look at whether it's a known issue. Is there any kind of auto-recovery tools? We use a lot of auto recovery tools like automatic connection killers, service restarts, which will generally fix 80% of most of the outages that we have, and then they get automatically deployed. We don't even have to do anything. And sometimes, it doesn't really work. So sometimes you need to make sure that people get notified, and then you basically need to escalate. And then that's where the comms lead comes in. He or she would then go and update people who need to be updated. Maybe some customers need to be notified, and they will make sure that constant updates are going out, reassuring everyone of what is going on. And now we get to the mitigate step. So here's something that people really need to keep in mind is we're focused on stopping the bleed. It is about actually making sure that the customers who are impacted are not impacted now. It could be a hack that you put out. Maybe you roll out more instances. Maybe you roll out, disable some feature temporarily. But you need to make sure that the system doesn't die and it doesn't grow out of hand. So it's not about finding the actual issue. It's about mitigating it. And then you go on to the next step, which is actually finding the issue. So here, get things working again. Make sure you collaborate with everyone. And in this case, the automatic ticket that was created, you start putting in all of the information that you need. All of these people who are on call now will then start putting in information into the ticket and basically keeping everyone updated on what they're doing. In our cases, things like demo creation needs to be maybe disabled depending on which systems are updated, which systems are affected. Maybe support needs to be updated, and then people, since we have multiple time zones in service, people may just need to hand over, say, from Sri Lanka in the evening over to Netherlands in the their afternoon. So as long as you have all of these steps documented in Jira, it makes it so much easier because there is no Zoom calls in the middle of an incident. You don't need to go and manually tell people, hey, this is what is going on. People don't come and tap you on the shoulder while you're trying to work and ask you what is going on. There's not a 10 million messages in Slack. It's all in Jira. Comms lead updates everyone, and it's all smooth. And everyone can focus on what they need to do. And in this flow, we basically the engineer starts adding information into the Jira issue. And then the comms lead can look at the Jira issue and then start updating the other stakeholders. We look at whether temporary mitigation is possible or not. If it is possible, then we do that right away. If the system is if the system comes online again, perfect, we're done. And if it's not, then you start to bring in more people, figure out who's the domain specialist in this, and then you start looking at the actual problem and trying to basically fix it. Now, again, your focus is on stopping the bleed. So if you need to hand it over to other teams and drawing more people in and updating as you just keep updating the Jira issue so that everyone's briefed. And then as you need it, you escalate it to more people in the team. And sometimes, we've never had it ourselves, but sometimes you need everyone in the company working on this issue to make sure that it doesn't blow out of proportion. And the next step is the resolve step. So you may have stopped the bleed, and now you basically got a handle. The system is not getting worse, but it's still broken, and you just applied like a plaster on top. So now you need to figure out what is actually going on. So you need to find out what the root cause is. Hopefully it's something that you know, and hopefully it's something that you can put out. But it's not always the case that you can deploy something right away. Sometimes it can take weeks. Sometimes there is some kind of underlying issue that you just identified, and fixing that problem, migrating and restoring customer accounts, that may take weeks sometimes. And while that is going on, you still need to keep them updated, and you need to make everyone make sure everyone working on it is updated as well. So this step is just focused on making sure that the actual problem that caused this incident is fixed. And you do it by escalating to more people, and once basically digging down. So you'll be reviewing logs, you'll be looking at, maybe you already added some extra logs while you were stopping, like in your initial response. You'll be looking at that, and you'll be trying to find out, okay, what could the actual problem be? And if the system is restored at this point, then the CL goes ahead and updates everyone, makes sure that the customers are notified that they're not affected, and then you start on the next step. And the next step is all about the follow-up. So you've had a problem, you've stopped the bleed, and you've also fixed it. Now the customers are not affected, the customers are fine, they might be a little annoyed, your team is now tired, and now you're basically looking at, okay, what went wrong here? This is also an important step. And here you need to make sure that it is a blame-free environment. If you're going after people, who's responsible for this, you're the person who did this, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. That's not a good attitude to come at, because a lot of people contributed to this problem. And it's not something that is done on purpose. It is, software is complicated. And when you start working on different environments, and there's a lot of people involved in the process of shipping software. And it's a process issue rather than an individual issue. So you need to look at, even if something simple like, well, not simple, but something devastating like someone deleting your production database. The problem isn't that someone deleted your database at all. The problem is that someone has access to production database keys and they dropped it and you don't have backups. That's a process problem. That's not an individual problem. So you need to make sure when you're doing the follow-up that you're looking at what failed in your process. Is it something that you can actually fix? Because if, for example, you're all on AWS and then AWS goes down, there's nothing much you can do. Of course, you can then look at things like multi-cloud and having your own servers, but that in itself is a massive issue, and then you need to look at what the cost-benefit of that approach is. So make sure that you follow up on the review, what went well, what didn't go well, document all of that, and then make sure that you use all of that information for the next time this happens. And it's fine to make mistakes. You just need to focus on not making the same mistake. That's the main takeaway here. So the follow-up itself is, creating the RCAs. For us, some learnings that we had are going to be coming up now. And like the polar bears in the comic, I think every iteration that we have an incident, I think we get a little better at it. And as long as you're doing that, that's a good outcome. So one major thing for us is we've already been using a lot of automation tools. We have a lot of custom services running, and we wanted to make sure that we leverage those existing workflows, because it's all about making sure that whatever process that you have, you can't just go ahead and blow it all up and then say, we're going to do this right now, because there's a lot of friction in that kind of approach. So you need to make sure that what you have, you leverage that. We were already using a lot of Atlassian products, so Opsgenie was an obvious choice there. We did go and review all of the other software that provide these services, but for us, when you actually look at what we have now and the other services like the add-ons and things that the Selector service was using, it made more sense for us. So for us, we can already connect whatever add-ons that we have into Opsgenie, and now suddenly our ecosystem is running with all of the software that we already use. We didn't have to reset anything. We didn't have to retrain anything. It's all done. Another thing is you really need to practice. We generally run drills, just 15 minutes every week or maybe once in 2 weeks of the active team. They would come in, this is the error that occurred, we'd look at some old error, and then the team would run through the steps. They're not even just, there's not a lot of work on like finding the bug or anything like that. It's more about like this process. We just look at the flowchart, we look at the updates that we made, we just say out, okay, I'm creating an issue now, I'm updating the customer now, I'm going into logs and looking at this now. Just running through it, it's like a table read. And we just run through them every little while to make sure that we are fresh. We understand what is in the flow. We understand the updates from the last simulation, and we're incorporating all those changes. We also just have plans on running breakathons where the system is like we'll have staging and then we'll intentionally break it in a black box, like a black box approach, and then have the team kind of figure out what is going on and just run simulations on it. So it just prepares you, because you don't want to be thinking about these things while the incident is happening. You want to have a relaxed environment, just break things, figure out, okay, this is what we do. Then by the time the actual thing comes up, people are relaxed. They're not freaking out about the system being down. They are calm. They know what to do. Everyone has a action that they need to go and do, and the plan is in motion. And keep in mind, your best laid plans do not survive meeting the enemy. So it doesn't matter that you actually go and then everything needs to change. That's fine. It's better to go, because whatever happens is that it's better to go in with some information, and then if everything fails, then in the next step, just basically you go ahead and review and improve. So just make sure that you keep doing that, right? And also make sure that it's not just a dev problem here. You need to make sure that you incorporate the larger organizational requirements for the company earlier on. You need to get buy-in from different departments and make sure they're all working on it. Because the problem here is you may just assume, okay, my devs are just going to sleep with a pager for the week that they're on call. People have lives. You can't really do that. And you can't really ask them to come into work if they're not being paid. So you need to figure out how will the compensation work. You can have approaches like getting a leave, maybe basically getting a 1.5x pay or regular pay if you're called in or not called in, or if you're on active service, or if you're on active on call. So it depends. That's a conversation that you need to have with different departments, and make sure you have employee buy-in. You also have managerial buy-in. And you also need to take into account things like uptime guarantees, SLAs, because how much coverage do you need? We had coverage in Sri Lanka, Netherlands, North America, and well, they're still in the same time zone, but across the different time zones in America as well. So do you need it to be that wide? If all of your customers are in Europe, maybe not so much. But if your customers are across the world, then that's something that you need to take into account. And uptime guarantees itself is like a big discussion to be had, because what happens if something happens over the weekend and you don't have developers on call at that time because they're all away? Do you need to be fixed right away? Not. Does P2 or P3 level issues need to be fixed right away or not? Those are all conversations that you should be having early before you start on this. And that's it. So if you have any questions, stay tuned for the panel discussion. We'll be covering a bunch of stuff in there. And if you want to reach out to me to get any resources that we worked on, I'm happy to share and basically let you guys know. Just ping me on Twitter. I'm also on LinkedIn and on email. And you can just scan the QR code to get access to the site. And you can just reach out to me. That's it. Yeah. I hope you had, hope you learned something, and we'll follow up in the panel. Thanks.
Thanks, John, for that insightful session. Now we'll be heading for a short 10-minute break. Now, here's a small reminder to everyone watching. There is a small competition on. This, is one of those social media competitions that are run by corporates just to feel better, that their hashtags were used. Make our company impress. So please humor them and tag your favorite moment of the event and stand a chance to win a JBL noise-cancelling headphone set. For gamers and, anyone who's single and, ready to mingle and at home, thaniyama. Capture your favorite moment of EX, not your X again. Tag Gapstars, use the hashtag #ExploreExpanded and Gapstars, and you can win a noise-cancelling headphone set, a JBL headset. Now, the winner of day one is Tasanthan. He has tagged Gapstars more than 10 times. Give it up for Tasanthan. You win yourself a JBL noise-cancelling headset. So congratulations to Tasanthan, and our team will get in touch with you. So we'll be back in 10 minutes. Until then, go and chew karla, and okay, bye. Everyone, and hope you had your 2 breaks and all of that. And hope you guys are enjoying day 2 of Explorer Expanded. My name is Gehan Bloch and I'm your host. Now let's move on to our 3rd speaker for the day. With nearly 2 decades of experience as a software architect, developer and engineering leader, he currently works as a software architect at Atlassian. Okay, am I saying that right? Yes. Could you scroll this thing? Thank you. He's experienced in software architecture and development spanning software as a service, connected devices in IoT, cloud computing, and mobile. And outside of work, in addition to technology, he enjoys watching all kinds of sports like the NFL, cricket, basketball, tennis, you name it, even curling. Weird. He prefers watching sports over sitcoms. So during COVID, he took an opportunity to learn both golf and tennis, which he plays both regularly now, and he loves being a dad. But by far the most interesting part about him is his surname. My gosh. Because every time the organizers gave me his surname, my filthy mind kept rearranging it. So please give it up for your 3rd speaker of the day, Roshan, oh my God, I hate my dirty mind, Paiva.
Let me start by sharing my slides. Okie dokes. Do you guys see my slides? I'm going to assume yes.
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Roshan Paiva, and I work at Atlassian. I'm an architect working for our cloud infrastructure teams. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all. I'd like to share some of our learnings while building our platform components that power all of our products today. I hope you find it useful. I will first give you a short intro into who I am, then talk about Atlassian's platform journey. We'll talk about why we invest in a platform and why it's important. We'll talk about some patterns on how you can identify when it's time to build platform components. Then I'll share some lessons we learned on how we built our platform components. All right, so about me. As stated, my name is Roshan Paiva, born and brought up in Sri Lanka, studied at St. Peter's, similar to Gehan, I believe. I'm going to date myself, but when I was very young, my parents bought me a ZX Spectrum. That's when the curiosity into software began. I did my undergraduate studies at IICS, or IIT, as what it is called now. As part of my degree, I had an internship at MIT. That was where I realized I loved software engineering. From there, once I graduated, I joined Virtusa. At that time, the company was called Technology Providers. I worked in the US for a few years and learned and experienced a lot. Then I decided it was time to further my education. You know, the more you learn and experience stuff, the more you realize there's a lot you don't know, right? And so I took a sabbatical from Virtusa and did my master's in software engineering at the University College London. Once I finished, I came back to Virtusa for a short stint and then moved to sunny California and joined DocuSign. That was such a fun and cool experience because the company was quite small then. I wore various hats and developed some really cool software, including a lot of platform services. That helped accelerate their growth. From there, I had the startup bug, and so joined a former boss of mine, and we started a company called Sirant in the IoT space. We sold that company to Cypress Semiconductors. And then I joined Atlassian as a software architect on the cloud infrastructure side. I'm loving my Atlassian journey so far. Right, now on to the fun stuff. As you may know Atlassian for our product suite, Jira, Confluence, Trello, Bitbucket, etc. But what you might not realize is that all of these products are built on top of our platform. Our platform is broken down into 3 layers. The first we call foundation. These are primitives like networking, data, our PaaS, or platform as a service, which is an abstraction over AWS. The next one is we call platform services. These are cross-cutting concerns like an API gateway, a GraphQL gateway, rate limiting, notifications, an event bus for service-to-service communications. We built these so that the products don't have to build their own and can leverage these. The last one we call product platform. This layer of platform is more closer to the products. It understands business logic to a certain degree. It facilitates new products to be spun up faster to unlock new business opportunities while maintaining consistency. However, we didn't start like this. When Atlassian started, we didn't have a platform. The first version of the platform was born around the time we rolled out our first version of our cloud products. But as you can imagine, as we started rolling out more products, the need for platform became more and more apparent. We started to invest in the platform and it became a multiplier for us. Today, our platform plays a major role in everything we do. It allows us to accelerate product development and easily meet compliance regulations, among other things. Let's start with why, right? Why do we build a platform? Well, when we have just one product or one service, there is no need for a platform. But when your organization grows and you start having multiple services, multiple products, especially when you have multiple teams working on these services and products, you start needing to share code, share functionality, have consistency across your teams and services. You don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? That is the start of your platform. By having a platform in place, you unlock efficiency gains, ensure consistency, and allow teams to unlock new business value, among many other advantages. Let me share some examples on how our platform helps us. So let's start with efficiency gains. Our product teams can focus on building great products while leveraging all of the goodness of the platform without having to build their own. For example, in the foundation layer, Atlassian's product teams don't need to worry about how they should deploy a service or learn the nuances of AWS, configuring auto-scaling, making it highly available by deploying it in different AZs, availability zones and regions, or understanding how progressive rollouts work. They leave that to the experts on the platform. Today, Atlassian service owners simply declare all of these in a service descriptor. They declare that they want progressive rollouts and how. They specify which regions the service should be deployed in and the scale out and scale in conditions. And the platform will take care of all of that for them. The platform also creates default dashboards for the service owner to monitor their service. Pretty neat, right? So the service or product owner only has to focus on building a really good, solid service. We take care of the rest. From a consistency perspective, as an example, let's talk about service communications in the microservices world. We have thousands running here. So it's something that we have to address. At Atlassian, service owners just need to declare their service dependencies in their service descriptor. The service descriptor is like a file that describes everything about your service, right? And we use that to feed information into the platform. For example, a service owner might say, my service depends on service A. The platform will take care of discovering that service and injecting an environment variable at runtime for them to point to. The platform then establishes the communication channel with the dependency, and this communication channel comes complete with retries, failover, rate limiting, circuit breaking. It also ensures the connection stays warm, all this good stuff. This ensures consistency in all service-to-service communication. And the service owners need to only worry about making the request and handling the response or error codes. The network communication is taken care of by the platform. From the third one is unlocking business value. So think of this layer like, so the platform is Lego. Think of this layer as like composite Lego blocks that product teams can use to build new products faster. For example, we have a service that represents a user. It does user management, identity, along with permissions, along with all of our products, across all of our products in a consistent manner. When rolling out a new product, that team doesn't need to worry about this user concern at all. They just leverage this platform piece. Similarly, from a UI perspective, we have a UI platform component that standardizes the way we display content in web and mobile so that the experience is consistent, from emojis to comments to online collaboration experiences. These are some examples of the power of the platform. Okay, we talked about why we need platform and its benefits. Now, it's time to talk about how we identify when it's time to build platform components. There are three main patterns to this. The first one is called shelving. This is where you think, okay, I will build this platform service in case someone ever needs it. So there are no consumers yet for this service. The good thing here is that if some team ever needs it, there's no wait time. It's ready to go. You've been super proactive about it. The risk, though, is waste. Perhaps no one will ever use it. Perhaps there are a requirements mismatch. Perhaps you made some assumptions about requirements and they don't quite fit your consumers, right? The next pattern that we've identified, we call it the early adopter pattern. For example, you think, there's this one team that needs this sort of thing. It sounds like a common concern, so let's create a platform service for it. Okay, so the good thing about this case is that you have somewhat of a signal that there's a need for this service, or this common service. The requirements are fairly clear. The risk here, though, is overfitting, meaning that making it just for this one early adopter, and it might not work for other teams. And the third pattern is the deferred platform pattern. For example, right? You might think, I've looked at all of our services and there's 2 or more consumers doing the same thing. For example, these 2 services are doing their own rate limiting. It's very apparent that it's a common concern. Let's build a rate limiting platform service. Okay, so the good thing here is that we have a very clear signal that there is definitely a need to extract this concern out into a common platform component. The risk here is services are already doing their own thing. Unless you show them strong value, there isn't an incentive for them to consume this platform service. The engineering cost to change is too high to get the same value. So they might not adopt what you build. This pattern is on the reactive side of things. Over time, we have realized that building primitives, for building primitives, it's best to adopt the deferred platform pattern. You want to have clear signal that this is definitely needed to invest a lot of time in it. Whereas for platform services and maybe even product platform, the early adopter with some modifications, and I'll talk about them, work best because you want to minimize waste. All right, now let's change gears and discuss some of the lessons we've learned while building our platform, components. All right, there's a lot here. Bear with me, but we'll go through it together. Okay. So the first one is treat platform as a product, right? The difference here is that your users are internal users. I would argue that internal devs are sometimes more demanding. You have to ensure that you meet their expectations in terms of capabilities, as well as ensure a really solid developer experience. The next one, your platform needs to be aligned with your organization's business strategy. Remember, the platform is a multiplier. So for example, if your org is going after enterprise customers, the platform needs to be ready first. You need to have a consistent user model, support for multi-tenancy, have a data and perhaps network isolation strategy, a strategy for blast radius reduction, ensure secure communications for north, south, and east-west traffic. The goal is that the platform will do all the hard work, and so that the product teams don't have very little to do. The next one, okay, figure out the engagement model. Once you have a clear signal that you need a particular platform component, identify potential users of that service early and get their commitment to use it. Ideally, we found a sweet spot of like 3 services. So you want 1 large service and 2 small to medium-sized services. Why? The large service consuming your platform component will give you immediate validation that it's useful, and other services will automatically follow. The small and medium services will ensure that you don't overfit to the large one. You balance the capabilities offered so that it helps both larger services and small ones. An approach to develop platform services that we followed sometimes is called inner sourcing, where we partner with a consumer service and build it together. So they feel a sense of ownership of adopting the platform services, and we get to build it faster. Okay, next one is start small. Deliver something. So deliver something that delivers value and then iterate on it. There is no need to ship everything in one go. When we built our rate limiting service, it only had per node rate limiting, and the algorithm was fixed window. But once we got adoption, we subsequently added distributed rate limiting, sliding window algo, and cost-based rate limiting. So you can incrementally add the value. Okay, and the next one, okay. At every step of delivering value, measure and understand how your consumers are using your service. Use that as signal to decide what capability to build or add next. Super important, right? You got to measure every step of the way. The next one, make it easy for them to consume and configure. Provide default dashboards and monitoring. Self-serve is the ultimate goal, right? You don't want them to reach out to you every time they want to use your service or consume your platform service. All right. The next one, you will have some customers who can't wait for your service, and you will have some consumers who will complain and give you grief. Be patient. This is especially true for the services who have already something in place and have to replace it with a platform component. By the way, the 5 stages of grief in platform adoption are, first one is denial. That is where they think, I don't need to use this platform component. I have a service that does exactly the same thing. I built it. The second one is anger. What? I have to use this platform service if I have to get this feature? No way. The third one is bargaining, where you'll find teams going, okay, I'll use your platform service if you add this feature, right? And the fourth stage of grief is depression. Oh man, I have to use this platform service, otherwise I'm not compliant. And the last one is acceptance, where they go, okay, I used it. It wasn't so bad. It was honestly great. And the last thing I also want to just call out is beware of anti-patterns. This is especially true when it comes to figuring out what is a platform component. So a common one here is a product team needs a capability, but they don't want to build it themselves. So they throw it over the wall and assume it to be a platform thingy. Just because a team doesn't want to own something, it doesn't mean it's a platform component, okay? Don't fall for that one. Another one is this thing called over the wall. Let's say a product team might build it, and then they try to hand it over to you, the platform team, saying, see how cool I am? I'm contributing to the platform. No, not a good reason. They've built this component with their service in mind. It's not built for common consumption. If the platform team takes it over, they will have a lot of work to do to turn it into a generic platform component. A good way to overcome this, though, is working together, collaborating on it. So don't let them work on it alone. Build it together so that the platform team can make sure that it's built in a generic manner. Right? All right. A few more lessons learned, perhaps from a layers perspective, right? Platform layers perspective. So for the foundation, you need the experts. Bring the A team. They understand the inner workings of networking or AWS. They know what works, what are the best practices, what are the pitfalls and limitations that they build your limitations, and they'll build your foundation to mitigate them. So trust this team, invest in this team. This team is what everything is based on, right? Another one here is avoid the shiny object syndrome. For example, right? The shiny object syndrome is, oh, look, everyone in Hacker News is using Istio for service mesh. We should use it too. No. Make sure it is the right fit. Is it overkill? Do you have to re-architect everything just to introduce this new technology? Like, as an example, are you buying a Ferrari just to go to the supermarket? No, right? Well, maybe some people might, but we don't want to do that. For the platform services, focus on value in terms of cross-cutting concerns. Remember, you're building something that the product teams can't just hack something together quickly, right? For example, an API gateway, complete with auth N, auth Z, that's authorization, authentication, rate limiting, circuit breaking, cause, etc. Everyone would benefit from this. another important thing is developer experience. Something that teams forget. Ensure the developer experience is consistent with your other platform services. The documentation, the discovery of the documentation, onboarding, managing configs, the configuration across the different platform components should be the same. I call this out because generally your platform team is a large team and you have different teams building different platform components, and it's easy to fall into Conway's law, where each team does it their own way, and then as a consuming service, when they try to consume the platform, it is very apparent it's built by different teams because the configs are different, the way you onboard is different, the way you manage new configuration is different. So try to avoid that. Think about that early. The next one is figure out your engagement model. Ideally, find early adopter product teams and build it together. We talked about that. And another last thing that we've liked here is dog food your onboarding. So before you ask others to adopt it within your own platform teams first. Learn what works, what doesn't work, right? If there are gaps in your documentation, fix those, iterate, make it easy and smooth. And once you're ready, then go after adoption. So a few takeaways before I wind up. Context is very important. You know the saying, your mileage may vary when buying a car, for example. So they might, on the sticker, they might say, okay, it's 25 miles per gallon, right? But that actually depends on your driving style. So just like that, for platform, just because everyone else is doing GraphQL or Kubernetes or service mesh, it doesn't mean that you need to do it too. Avoid that. Think really hard about that. Make sure it's right for you, your organization, and your team. And when building a platform component, think hard on why you need it. What is the business value it's offering your internal teams? And then think hard on how you will build it and how you will drive adoption to your platform component. All of these things need to be done together. Once that is done, then go build it. And finally, your goal is to be a multiplier that delights your consumers, the internal developers. When they succeed, you succeed. So build trust with your internal developers. Keep them happy and productive. Thanks. That's it from me.
A big thank you to Roshan for that very, very insightful session. Thank you very much. I did not know that you went to my same school. I really feel you. I mean, with a surname like Block, I found it hard. With a surname like Paiva, it would have been really, really bad at St. Peter's. So I feel you, brother. I feel you. But a very insightful session. Thank you, Roshan. Now, next we go on to another panel discussion, like yesterday, like day one. Again, it is going to be a tech lead fireside chat with Anjana and Hasitha. And they will be joined by the speakers for today, Mukundan, John, and Roshan. So I'd like to invite Anjana and Hasitha now on stage to kick off the panel discussion for day two.
All right, ready to go?
Ready to go. Yeah.
Cool. Cool, maybe let's start with a quick recap of today. So I think Mukundan spoke about Metaverse, extended reality, Web3, and then after that, John, you spoke about incident management, failure recovery, and finally, Roshan spoke about platforms. Let's take it away. Who wants to go first?
Let's start with some questions, and we'll get a summary from each. How do you like to?
Let's jump into questions.
I
shall start with something from the audience.
Cool.
Do we have Mukundan online?
No. Oh, okay. Mukundan is not online. Okay.
Right. Then let's go to...
Roshan is online. We can see him.
Yes, and obviously John is also
I'm
online.
here as well.
Online, real.
Shall we start with something for Roshan then?
Yes.
Hey Roshan, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So here's a question. This sort of ties back to what Murad said yesterday. He said something very interesting about architecture, which is delay your design decisions as much as possible until it's necessary. But now when you think about your three models, which I believe is early adopter, shelving versus deferred, right?
Yeah.
So if you think about what Murad said, does that mean that really you should wait until deferred, until more and more people start actually needing the requirement before you start using it, before you start building it?
Yeah, no, good question, Hasita. I think what we've identified from a I think when you're building a product for consumers, what Mukundan said made perfect sense, right? From a platform perspective, it's a bit hazy. It's like a spectrum, right? And what I'm trying to call out is when you build like foundation pieces, those primitives, like your PaaS, right? You want really good signal that this is a foundation piece. So you don't want to jump on it too early. You want to build something, make it work, iterate on it, and have other services use it, and then get signal that, yeah, this is a common concern. I'm going to extract it out and focus and put the experts on it. So that was more like of this deferred pattern. And then you have, cross-cutting concerns, right? Like I mentioned, like rate limiting, API gateway, service comms, right? There you can get early signal. So maybe as your company grows, one team will come and say, hey, we want a way to just send messages, fire and forget, right? Initially, you might actually say, there's only one team, I'm not that interested, right? You guys build something, and then when there are more teams, we might build it. Or, so I think the idea is there you're moving back into that balance between the reactive and proactive approach, where you want at least one or two early adopters. You have a solid use case. The important thing is requirements. You have your requirements, nailed down from these two early adopters, and then you can build something. It's like a spectrum. I hope I answered your question.
I think that makes sense. What you're really saying is it's a judgment call, right? You can't just have a rule saying this is how it works. Cool,
Yeah.
Perfect.
I think most of the organizations, unless they are big as Atlassian, they don't get time to do shelving. They don't get time to build platform services beforehand. It's always reactive. You start with something, some product team builds a feature, then someone says, you know what, we would like to have the same thing. Then only it comes to what we call it, we refactor the platform, refactor things into platform.
Yeah.
These guys are quite lucky. They can do things way before.
Advantages of being big, right?
That's right.
Yeah, that's true. The shelving, I brought that up is because we did do sometimes this thing. For example, let's say this especially happened when we first spun up the platform services team. So the team is keen to build something, right? And so they're looking for something to build, and they'll be like, oh, we've come up that this is the GraphQL is the way to go, right? And we will build a GraphQL gateway way too early, right? No services thinking about that yet. But ultimately the requirements don't align and no one uses it.
The shiny object.
Shiny, yeah.
Cool. By the way, we have Mukundan back.
Mukundan, hi.
Hi, Mukundan.
Hello. It was a pleasure catching up with you all earlier. And once again, I'm here.
No problem.
I do have a question for Roshan. I couldn't attend this session, but I did have this question for you. So So while we are talking about architecture, so the no code, low code is something which is being adopted at least in the metaverse. And apart from that, even the conventional programming is trying to adopt no code, low code, where they are talking about user interface based programming. What do you think is like going to be the future for that in the conventional software programming? And how do you see the adoption rate in Sri Lanka or probably the countries where you've been catering to?
That's a tricky question, man. The thing is, yes, I personally have not been part of the whole no code revolution or tried it myself, so it's hard to form an opinion. I'll be honest. But from like a 50,000-foot view, and I'm keen to hear Hasita and Anjana's take on this too.
Yeah.
Is that I'm guessing the no code approach will get you from 0 to 60 probably really fast, right?
Yeah.
It's like building blocks, right? So you're going to drag and drop or do some, thing and build something quick to get to, where you can prove out some capability really fast. But then I think to get to 80, 90%, you might have to, roll up your sleeves and dig in and really build that functionality to make your service or whatever thing it's trying to do, complete. I mean, that's my 2 cents.
No, I can relate to that. And in fact, when we used to have these tech jamming, the most obvious thing which some of the developers ask, hey, am I going to lose my job? A designer, is he going to take up my job? That always came in as a bit of a frustration, but I said, no, may not happen. I tried to convince them that like in the beginning, of course, you're giving, access to your designer so that he does something on your behalf and then presents the design to you. So he's already halfway through so that, that the leftover 50%, you can do it more efficiently. Yeah. This is what I think I've been saying to people, and I hope this is what is the real world demanding also.
Cool. I think
the way I look at it is platforms are low code. It's on a spectrum, right? You're reducing the amount of code that product developers have to write.
Yeah.
Sorry, Anjali.
Yeah, I have a comment on you mentioned about the service descriptor, right? That's quite closer to no-code environment where you simply say by dependency of the service that you consume, you may not have a UI for it, right? If you bring a UI for that, that's pretty low-code, no-code. And these type of meta services are the foundation for most of the low-code, no-code services where you have figured things at the foundation and then there is a abstraction where you can drag and drop things and it generates a descriptor. Descriptor is read by the engine, usual drill.
But remember, that will, to my point, it only takes you so far, right? So with this service descriptive one, you're taking care of these foundational pieces. How do you deploy your service, for example, right? How many instances? So it is the no code part is that the platform has like best practices on how we roll it out, how we progressively roll it out. How do we scale it in, scale it out? All those things. No one has to figure that stuff out, right? The no code piece, let's say, is doing it for you. But then you have to now build your service. You're using a Lego to do some initial stuff, and now you have to build your service. And I think to what all of you guys are saying is, yes, you will get to some point really fast without having to, do too much of work. But then you need to really use your expertise to build something useful.
Cool. Let's move on to you. More questions are... You want to ask the question for Mukundan?
Yes, Mukundan, I had a question from the audience. A vaguely controversial question, if I may. So the audience member asks, right now, people are addicted to their phones, internet and social media, so much so that it disrupts some people's lives, especially children. It's not far-fetched to think that the metaverse can have these same effects, but on massive proportions. What do you think about the downside or the dark side of this technology?
Yeah, I think that's the reality, I would say. It's when the reality hits you hard, you tend to take a path. Whether is it going to be deeper in there or you know your limits. See, it's like drinking, right? I know it might not be the right forum, but that's a reality again. So you know when to stop, right? When you are having a drink with your social drinking with your friends, you take 1 shot, probably 2 shots, and then beyond 4 shots or 5 shots, you kind of take a stop, saying, "Hey, this is my limit." You tend to decide when that is. That is exactly what you should be applying to, spending time with your mobile, spending time in the metaverse. It is addictive at some point. So it's all the regulation that a human has to have on himself. As a children, their parents should have that concern and make sure that they do not spend beyond some amount of time on these devices. Of course, it is meant to be addictive. It is so addictive. I spend time. So initially, I started by spending 6 hours on these virtual reality platforms, and now I'm spending 6 hours per week. So I think it's something where you set that norms in your head, saying, "Hey, this is good, and beyond this, this is not good." So all technology in that matter, anything beyond the need or beyond the requirements, if you're trying to consume it further, it is not good. This applies to watching television, it applies to using your mobile phones, or spending time in metaverse. In fact, shopping for that matter. You can shop until you go bankrupt, and beyond that, if you still want to shop, I can use my credit card. I have to stop. I think it's a social and a self responsibility which kicks in at this moment, trying to take you on the right path, I would say.
I think that's really true. No technology is really intrinsically good or bad, right? It's how we use it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I would say.
Makes sense. Anjana.
Let's do a gear shift. Let's get the question to John.
Sure.
Yeah, so you talked something very nice. You bring the term stop the bleeding. I have seen this, like when an incident happens, most of the organizations, they're trying to find who to blame, what would be the future enhancement. Some people would say, you know what, I told you so. If we would have built this feature, this wouldn't have happened. And so much of chaos and non-focused discussion, but no one is focusing at stopping the bleed. And you got that priority right, like stop the bleed, resolve, then come back later, then do a follow-up, then input that into your learning process. So let's talk about this, the stop the bleed, resolve, and how do you learn from something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, not to get political at all, but even if you look at the current situation, your focus should be on making sure that you're not harming the people. In this case, you're not harming the customers.
That's right.
So you need to make sure that your customers' problems are solved right away.
High priority.
Yeah, that's the high priority. So it could be a hack, it could be rolling out something expensive that isn't
Restart
viable.
the server.
Could be.
Right.
Everything that you need to do, you try it out. Once you have that patched, then you go ahead and then you start looking at the root cause. And let's say it's just a technical issue. You fix the root cause, then you basically go into the RCA process.
Right.
So
that's the analysis of the root cause.
Yeah. So there you find out why did this happen. Because mistakes happen, and I think as a culture, we shouldn't be looking at mistakes as like a really bad thing. Mistakes happen because you're doing new things, you're exploring areas. So it's really important that when mistakes happen, you learn from them.
That's right.
So the RCA is about making sure that that process that led to that mistake is not repeated. We don't want the same thing happening over and over again over a long time or even a short time. You need to fix it, then you learn from it, go on to new mistakes, new challenges. That's the main thing you need to do.
I think that's a really, really good mindset to figure it out. So prioritize things, stop the bleeding, then we go into details with the RCA, root cause analysis, and bring that into your whole system as a feedback.
Yeah.
Right. That's
I have a follow-up on that.
Sure.
So on the root cause analysis, how do you prevent participants from feeling like defensive? So we want people to come out with what the mistake was, right?
Yeah.
Any advice on how to make people safe enough to say, I made a mistake?
Yeah, I mean, so this is all about, this is the term here that you're looking for, psychological safety, right? So you need to really inculcate that into the team. So that means that the For us, for example, like we don't have like a very large structure, like a hierarchy. We're a flat structure for the most part. CTOs are just one like message away, and our focus is always on the team. So we are always looking at when the RCA itself, for example, it doesn't point to members creating mistakes. We're not talking about that. We're looking at, okay, what happened? We're just talking in very, very like non-confrontational language. We're talking in technical terms, and we keep that clear of blame. So even if someone goes and reads an RCA later, there's no talk about some person getting tagged or anything like that. Because then what happens is if people get that kind of negative feeling in, you're not like, even if you know something is going on in a very crisis moment, you're not going to reach out and say, hey, I think it might be this problem that I caused. You want people to have that safety net and be able to be comfortable to reach out and say, hey, I think I messed up here, and let's go fix it. And they need to be that safe. And it's really an organizational thing, and it's a culture thing that you need to build into the teams.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I think what most of IT guys figured, initially it's working with machines. And later we figured we are working with people, internal as well as externals.
Yeah.
As much as there are customers, there are a lot of internal people that you have to deal with.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of psychology comes into play, as you said.
Yeah.
You have to have certain principles. Don't blame the person, blame the process, blame the software, or get it indirect, but also bring that learning back into the system. Right? That's more important. That feedback loop.
Yeah. And the team also, like I think, senior members in the team also have the responsibility to make sure that when new people come in, that culture is kind of passed on, because it takes a long time for that culture to build up. And you really need to make sure that the organization is pushing for that, so that, as the company grows, it's basically part of its lifeblood.
So leadership basically needs to set the example.
Absolutely, right? Yeah, absolutely. Like I've heard of companies where, they drop production databases and the CTO is like, don't worry about it, that's our mistake. Because, a new person shouldn't be having production keys.
Exactly.
Right? So, and even then, like it should be an automatic restore from your, backup. That's a process issue. Yeah.
Before we move into Roshan, one follow-up on this. Where do you store the incident response plan? Because I've seen development teams.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you talk to them, they don't even know where the requirements documents are, right? That's quite common.
Yeah.
You miss requirements, you miss where to log defects, things like that. And what's best practice? So what do you advise on?
For us, I mean, it basically needs to be stored in the most accessible place, right? For us, we have a separate incidents channel. It's the first bookmark there. We also have it all on Confluence. So the moment something happens, just type in RCA incident, it shows up. And we also run these sessions to make sure that everyone knows where these things are. So it's all in the simulation, because it needs to be muscle memory.
Right.
It really needs to be muscle memory so that they don't panic. It's just like, you have soldiers, they run drills. You have sports teams, they run drills, because when you're in the melee, you don't need to think. You just are reacting right away. And then when you really need to think, it's something like just so out of left field that is an actual problem. And then, that just goes into your process, and then it's not a new thing anymore the next time it happens.
Right.
So that's how you should, really treat it.
I think that's a really good advice.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I add to that?
Yes, please.
Everything you said resonates very clearly with me as well. It's spot on. With regard to, and yeah, Hasid, a great question about having a blameless culture. It allows people to be safe, to make mistakes. I mean, that's the whole idea of software engineering, right? Yeah. And learn from it. Just to add to your point about where you store your, you mentioned RCA and things like that. So similarly for us, it's like the first thing in our bookmarks, in your Slack. We have a lot of Go links where we make it easy for people to understand the RCA process, understand what is the severity if they have to log a hot, right?
Yeah.
How do we determine the severity? Who to page?
Yeah.
And everyone is given this. So it's so funny you mentioned. I don't know if you guys can see this, but as part of, let me do this. As part of being an engineer, we also have a hard copy in case something is down,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like a cheat sheet saying, okay, here's what you're going to follow.
Because
So,
your own infra could go down. I can't be on that,
Exactly.
so you need the backups for sure.
Yeah. Good stuff, man.
I have a question for Roshan on the platform, and then we go to Mukundan after that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Roshan, it was nicely presented deck. I think you did a really good job. You explained it nicely. One question I have is on the breakdown. So you have on your platform, you have foundation layer, platform services, and product platform. So between the foundation and platform services, how do you qualify things? Because some certain features, certain services could be, hard to qualify for this. How do you do that?
Good question. And first of all, naming is hard, right? Naming is the hardest thing.
Exactly.
So we just randomly name them foundation, platform, services, and product.
We have a saying, naming your class is as hard as naming your child.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, there's no hard and fast rule like that, Anjana, to be honest, right? Like, yes, I have categorized them as layers, but it's actually all platform. It doesn't matter whether it's foundation or platform services. But there are some things that if you were to draw a plot of your services across all the things, you'll realize some are more closer to foundational pieces. Some are like in the middle, some are in platform services, but there's no, it's not like a layer, like a lockdown layer, nothing like that, right? I've just categorized them just to visually think about it like that. Does that help?
I think that helps. So it's a logical breakdown. Understood. Okay, makes sense.
Okay, another audience question for Mukundan. Let me try to rephrase this. Why would banks invest in blockchain technology? Because as the blockchain system starts to get adopted, it will sort of crowd out the middleman and it will eat into their business, right? So why would they, what's in it for them?
Interesting question. Again, I'm going to explain this with an analogy.
We have thrown you a curveball, haven't we?
we all started as hands-on programmers, right? In the very beginning of the career. And then there was a big gaga around the term AI. So when AI entered the market, the biggest, though there was a happiness around it, a lot of people felt threatened. Hey, is it going to remove my job? Is it going to steal my job? Right? But then when it came in, the overall methodology started changing. It's called the disruption. So when AI came in, new jobs came into picture. So now we needed humans to train these virtual machines to run programs for us, run the process for us. So instead of us creating and running the programs, we have the intermediate AI, which is what we are dealing with. So it's not snatching our job right away. At the moment when it enters, there is a bit of disruption. But as the nature demands, you will end up coexisting. So the main reason why I presented that as a topic, and that is one of the most controversial topic, I would say, DeFi and the bank coexisting. So it shouldn't be too late when, pretty much the banking industry, they are all sitting in a 100-year-old process, or probably even older, which has been proven, it's been proven successful, it's been proven productive, and all of that. Now we are talking about a new process which is coming in. It's kind of creating the disruption already. It's sooner than later you start adopting that. So right now, if you see, blockchain came in 8 years back, like the topics around blockchain. Initially, banks were very skeptical, but now if you see, a lot of global banks have started embracing blockchain technology. DeFi, which is just a brainchild of blockchain, is just 2 years old baby. But before it gets too late, before the bank ends in this wagon, it's always better that they start embracing. So you may definitely, it's going to be against your process. It's against, you're removing the bank out of the equation. But there are still ways where banks can still be part of building the new society or the new future, right? They have knowledge, and they have the user base, why not they be the drivers for the blockchain and the DeFi?
I think that's really great because you're absolutely right. I just realized while you're speaking, these are the same concerns, both questions that came from the audience were very similar to the concerns initially people had about the internet. Before that, people had about the computer, and before that, people had about television, right?
Televisions, yeah. So initially, I was trying to find some talking points, like not now, 8 years back, when VR came in, the virtual reality headsets. So when I used to take it to the customer, they would say like, my grandfather told me when I was a child not to sit close to a television. Now you are asking me to put a television near my eyes. Initially, when he asked me, gave this scenario, I didn't have an answer. Yeah, it makes sense. Then I had to go back and do some real research and identify that, okay, you're putting some display close to your eyes, but what matters is your IPD, interpupillar distance. It's not like you put your phone close to your eyes. Your pupils get so close, and that's why it's straining your eyes. But in a VR headset, it's not happening. So basically, I had to do all these research only after, I get stumped by all these questions. So it takes some time for people to understand the actual pain points. And over a period of time, they either have to live with it, they understand they have to live with it, but it's all in the regulation to what extent.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I just want to add something. While you were talking, an example for this is back in the day, before the automobile was introduced in New York, people at that time were complaining about how many horses there were and how much refuse they were generating. And they were saying the way it was scaling, that New York was going to be under a lot of horse shit. And, we all know what happened. The automobile was introduced and that problem went away. It became a completely different set. So, I think as these technologies come, it's not always scaling what you have now. It might be like completely something else.
Some different future version will be the...
Absolutely.
Yeah, actually, I have something to add to this. Now, you talked about the market size by 2025 being 400 billion, 2030, 1 trillion. I have a relatable experience on when the mobile phones and the mobile apps got released. So I was first, I looked into developing app was 2007, and then that was when I looked at it, and then I realized why do corporates need mobile apps? This is an interesting scenario. All young people started using mobile apps, and when they come to office, they're like, do we have to do this on a desktop? Why can't we do it on the floor? Just click a button, and that came as a requirement. So I see the social drive on gaming and so many aspects. People would wear VR goggles and do that. And when this young generation, when they come to office, they would simply ask for it, and that becomes a requirement, and this adaptation can be even higher. So the same thing happened to mobile. Mobile apps were never meant for corporate stuff.
Yeah.
Today, if you take a mobile app, it's pretty much a corporate thing. Even a gamification is taken into.
Yeah.
Right? So this can get even bigger because a newer generation who are using this, moment they come to office, they're going to ask for that.
Yeah. And you are actually right, and that's happening already. Accenture has been giving out VR headsets to the newly joined employees. So they are promoting them. The job itself is a remote job, and they work from home, and they attend meetings in a VR headsets, their daily stand-up. And it's already happening, I would say.
Cool. Do you want to switch?
Shall I go? Okay.
Yes, please go.
Actually, Anjana, just to coming back to the question you asked me about the layers, right? I just want one more thing I just remembered is that when we build platform components, we also use the platform, right?
That's right. I have that question. I think you answered that.
Yeah. So like also a way to determine layering is if you're just building the primitives where you're not leveraging anything else, that kind of falls right at the bottom. And when you build this cross-cutting concerns, you're probably using the past, right, to deploy and observability and all that good stuff. So it kind of obvious, it's in that layered, the second tier, things like that. And when you're combining multiple of them to build a product platform, then it sits at the top of the layer.
That's a good point, because if your platform service duplicate your foundation multiple times, That's a mistake right there.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Anjana,
Sorry, I
think
forgot
there is
about that.
a-
That's why I thought I'll share it quickly. Yeah.
Hey, by the way, there is a question in the Q&A box. Can you have a look at it? Probably, I think it is John.
Let us see.
A question on the list.
Yeah.
I
You want me to
am
read it
looking
out?
forward to appear.
I can.
Until that comes up, shall I go ahead with my question for Roshan?
Sure.
So, shiny object syndrome. So you know this thing is, it's a recruitment and retention drive as well, right? And when you put out recruitment and says, hey, we have GraphQL, we have Kubernetes, we have blockchain, we have all these things.
We have VR, Metaverse.
Yeah, so on one hand, these will have applications at some point, but on the other hand, you don't need it at the moment. How do we, any advice on how to keep your smart engineers happy while keeping them from reaching for shiny objects unnecessarily?
Yeah, no, Hasinda, that's a really good question, right? And sometimes, I'll be honest, even we are pressured from the top saying, we should be using service mesh. We want to be putting that, when we want to hire engineers, because people are like, okay, are you using this? Then we'll join, It's really tricky. And I think the one approach we've taken here is, we do spin up a team to evaluate the effectiveness of using the shiny object, right? And so teams can, it's like an R&D kind of thing. So teams can experiment. Sometimes we source people from various different department or areas of the organization who are interested in this, and they can spike it out and understand, oh, it is fairly complex. Like let them answer it for themselves, It is fairly complex. It is going to take a lot of rework just to, add this to our thing. Or maybe the benefits are negligible for what we built homegrown so far. Or wow, it ticks all the boxes. We just have to just add this thing, and we've added these 5 capabilities.
It's great.
That's awesome, right? That's awesome. So but the idea, what we've done is we let the teams figure that decide for themselves. So let them run a spike, experiment with it. So they're not like, oh, I'm not allowed to touch this. No, you can. And you write a paper saying, yes, this is why I should or why I shouldn't use it after having spent a month or 2 or however long it takes to decide that whether to use this technology or not. Sometimes it takes long. I'll just give you an example. So we went down the service mesh journey, right? It was like the hottest topic, right? And so we spent 6 months evaluating different dynamic control planes. And we picked Istio at that time, thinking that's the way to go. And then we tried to retrofit Istio into our PaaS. Now our PaaS is already pretty dynamic. There's a lot of stuff. But we realized that, oh my God, this is bigger than we thought, right? And the benefits we're getting right now is negligible. Yes, industry is using Istio, and industry, obviously pumps in updates and things like that we could just benefit from by updating Istio. Whereas a homegrown thing, we had to build it on our own, right? But the cost to retrofit that was a bit too high at that time. It was about 2 years ago. We might revisit it again. It's never say never. But at that time, we did spend a lot of time to go down that path and then realized it's not for us right now. I mean, there was a small team that invested a lot of time in that.
Sounds good.
Does that answer your question?
That answers your question. My question basically, let people experiment, but not on production and not on end users, right?
Yes. Yes.
I have a question on the same line, right? You talked a lot about the structure, but how do you test it? In generally, how do you test a platform? Is it any different to test in overall product?
Excellent question, Anjana. It's very similar, actually. It's very similar. So all the gates we have for platform are very similar to product. There are SLAs, right? SLOs, but thresholds that we have to meet. Because remember, we are supporting our product teams. So we have to take care of the scalability, reliability, redundancy, availability, all the kind of good stuff, right? And so we also, we run load tests, we run war games. I think you guys are talking about incidents. So we make incidents, network failures, or maybe a dependency down, right? And then how does the team does the team have the run books to quickly recover this thing? Keep them running. So we run incident wargaming once a quarter, and we randomly pick someone to be the on-call while everyone observes that. So we practice this as if it's a product. And then from a testing perspective, like I said, it's important to partner with actually your consumer, right? So work with them to make sure that we are satisfying their requirements. It's just like building a product, right? You want to work with your initial consumers to make sure that there's a product market fit, right? So they're building something that someone really needs. So just like that for platform, we need to have a product market fit. So our market is the product team. So make sure that, yes, the capabilities we're offering satisfies their requirement. If it's rate limiting, yes, it's low overhead, really quick decisioning, sends the response codes back, allows the client to retry when they want to. Like, all the information is there. They just have to drop this thing in their router or whatever, and it does the magic for you. Cool. Does that answer your question?
I think that answered, because the platform comes with lots of non-functional requirements, right? Non-functional features. Yeah. You have to have a proper testing mechanism to get that sorted. By the way, we are at the last 8 minutes, so we'll do another round. I have a few questions for John, and then you have some questions for Mukundan?
I have some trouble accessing the most recent audience questions, so let's wait. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay, I'll start with the few questions. So coming back to John, so you talked about the playbook.
Yeah.
What's the scope of playbook? What goes in, what goes out?
So great. I mean, that's a good question. For us, initially, it's about making sure that everyone knows what kind of what kind of things can happen. So for us, it's all about documenting all of the CloudWatch alerts that we have set up, Sentry alerts, Pingdom, anything that is funneling information into the system, we document all of that.
Okay.
And then we put in information about, okay, if this is the error that you're getting, most likely it's going to be auto-resolved, or most likely you're going to have to, escalate it.
Okay.
We also give
frequent questions, frequent issues, and
exactly,
responses.
because some are not really errors themselves. Like, for example, one thing that shows up for us is increased number of workers. So that is something that auto scales automatically depending on how many jobs are queued, and then it'll go down once the workers get through them. So you just need to make sure if this pings you just check in again in 10 minutes to see whether it's gone down. So all of that information actually goes into the playbook. You don't actually put in any information on fixing stuff, because you're making assumptions on what that problem could be. Because here the actual issue is that it's not always the devs that look into it. We have actually engineering managers, we have graphics designers, customer support even, just having an eye on that channel. Because we're not like a very large organization. So we have 70 people, and a lot of it is clustered in Europe, but we still have North America and Asia here. So it's useful to have all that eyes, because that's a large
all hands on deck.
Exactly, right? So don't put in information on how to fix things, but do put in information on the triaging step, because there we need to identify what the problem could be.
Nice. I think that's a good scope for that. And one point, this is slightly different to the technical stuff, but you brought up a point, compensation structure for on-call staff, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, let's talk about that. That's quite interesting in a response plan. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that we thought about. I mean, because it's a question that you need to ask yourself, right? Because you're generally the thing that you might be just kind of thinking, oh, we'll just make sure that someone is on call on a schedule somewhere. But you're basically asking someone to dedicate time, because if you're on call, you're not outside, you're not away from your laptop, you're not drinking, you're not eating, you're available. But you're also not at work, kind of. So you really need to think about, if that's the case, you're asking someone to spend time, right? So what is the compensation going to look like?
Like a motivation.
Yeah, because you want people to be involved in this. You want people to actually be looking out for the customers. So there's multiple strategies. You can go for in lieu leave. You can have it escalate so that just being on call, you're going to get maybe half a day leave or something like that for every day that you're on. But if you're asked to come in, that's a full day of work that you're putting in.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So even if it's only for a few hours, you're putting your attention. You could also go on the monetary side, other benefits, but it's something that you need to figure out and make sure you address, because you want people attentive and you really want people to, when you're on call, you need to be on call.
I think that's a very good point. As much as we plan things, we have to plan for resignations and the current trends and keep the work interesting. That whole employee experience needs to be sorted.
And also backups to that, because with Sri Lanka, for example, you might have random power cuts in there, net issues, things like that. Yeah. You need to have backups for your backups if you really want to make sure that customers are not impacted.
Nice.
Yeah.
Speaking of John, can I add to that also, if you don't mind? Right? Yes. So John, spot on, man. We do exactly that. So we everyone at Atlassian, everyone goes on call, right? Yeah. And based on a rotation, it might be once a month or once in 2 months, depending on the size of the team, and it's for a week, a weekend included, right? And you are compensated monetarily. So it's like a standard structure. So yeah, I think that's super important, because on call is so important, right? You have to take it seriously, right? Yeah. And just to add to that, you said backup for the backups.
Absolutely.
Also, a very good point. So generally 2 people go on call. There's a primary and a shadow, and the shadow is like the trainee, right? They get the alerts as well, but they let the primary actually act on it and learn from how the primary takes care of an incident or resolves it or whatever. The shadow is the one that probably does DevOps. So when we go on call, they don't do work. Yeah. Their job is on call. Yeah. So if this not a noisy week, right? Then you have DevOps tasks that are like, take that, take that. Exactly. So they take on that kind of work, and maybe it can be finished in a week, maybe it cannot, but they'll do it in a point so that they park it at the end of their shift, and then the next pair take it on and continue with that. So that's kind of how we look at this whole on-call roster and compensating them, like spot on with everything you said. Yeah, just wanted to share that we actually also do that. Yeah.
So speaking of power cuts and stuff, there is a question from the audience. I think the question is, incident response plans versus disaster recovery management plans. Are they similar? Are they part of the same thing, or are they?
They tie in. So that's a good question, because what happens is your incident response plan is the kind of like the container, and then the disaster recovery is part of it. Because your incident might actually just be that your production database is gone, your backups have been corrupted, or it's not recent enough, and now maybe you have to restore from offsite backup. And then that's when like individual plans may come into play. Things like, I think recently one of our local payment providers had an issue where the code base was completely broken into. So their plan for the specific incident would also then include things like how to make sure that their code integrity is not is checked, how to make sure that the customers' transactions aren't actually leaked. So that would actually have a lot of other smaller plans that tie into this. So you need to have all of that documented as well, and then triggered from your incident response system.
Yeah, that requires a fair amount of thinking ahead, right?
Quite a bit, and I think it's not always something that you start out with, because these come in usually what happens is growing companies, the first time they crash, they won't have a plan. And then good management should then identify that as a problem and have it escalated so that the next time it happens, you have something in play. But I think as the scope increases, things like transactions, things that have heavy, I think, off online repercussions like medical, things like that, should have those in play right at the start, because you don't want to
critical.
Because you don't want to wing it. You're not going to wing it, because some of those software is critical. Like you're not going to build a bridge without thinking, okay, if the load for this bridge is 100 tons, am I going to let vehicles 150 tons go on? You're going to have to think through everything. So I think, it's a good question. And I think it's something that you really need to think about when you're building out your plans.
Perfect. Thanks.
I think we are out of time right now.
We're out of time?
Yes.
Okay. Roshan, Mukundan, and John, thank you so much. We ourselves learned a lot.
Definitely.
And let's hope to do this again sometime in version 3 of this event, I suppose.
Sure.
For sure. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having us, guys. Appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
It was pretty fun. All the very best, guys. We'll catch up soon.
Probably
in person.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right. So thank you first to the panel, to Anjana, Hasita, and all our speakers. Thank you so much. That was a very, very insightful session, I think, because I didn't really get most of it. But still. So the party has started here at Gapstars. So let's go through the crowd. Oh my God, the party is here. We have popcorn. We have a bunch of Dutch people. We have Sri Lankans. Wow, wow, wow. All right. Yes, hello. Oh my gosh. Look at... So I wore these things which they gave me, and if this spills and I have some facial sort of thing to do, you will be paying by euro, okay? All right. Now before... Oh shit! I think it's happening. Oh gosh, okay. Right. So before I do like a... Oh my God, it's coming off from me. What the hell? Who's that girl? All right. But before I take over, there's your Hugo Boss, your boss, wants to speak a few words. He has a few people to thank. So Hugo Boss, give it up for Hugo.
Thank you, Gayan. Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here, guys. Looks really amazing from here. All you guys wearing the neon. I'm super proud of everyone. I think we had a really, really cool event the last 2 days. So I just want to thank you guys for being here tonight. I want to thank everyone that tuned in on Zoom. I want to thank all the speakers. And I have a whole list of people that I also want to say a special thanks to. First of all, Ashani, Dulana, Medita, Tanuka, Fiona, Nilmini, and Prashani. Thank you so much for arranging everything. From the catering to the finance to making sure that everything here is as good as it is. Give them a round of applause, please. Woo! Well done, guys. Then I have also one more person, Tilina from Tanuka. You know him, the big guy. He did everything in the back end on his tuk-tuk, so give him a round of applause as well. Woo! Then I have a special thanks to Anjana, Hasita, and John. Of course, John for being a great speaker, and Hasita and Anjana for making a great panel discussion. Thank you so much, guys. Woo! Then I have a few more people. I have 2 party starters. Where are they? Philippa and Mark. I think your part is next, right? There you are. All right. Thanks in advance. Thanks in advance. They will be giving you a little bit of a surprise soon. I have more people, since this is quite a big production. Give me 1 second. I think one of the most important teams that has really lived this conference in the last few days, and you've all seen them working day and night. I even heard that they slept in the office last night. I saw them taking a shower right there at the fire hose not too long ago. So really, Amazing job, guys. Give it up for Asma, Zara, Tarif, and Rahul. Woo! Super job, guys. I think you've really done something special. I've never seen an event like this in Sri Lanka. I've never seen an event anywhere like this, actually. So I'm really hoping that this is the first time of many. So thank you so much for arranging this. And I think also the message of this event, as we said in the beginning, this is for you guys, this is for the engineering community in Sri Lanka, but this is also for everyone actually in Sri Lanka, just to make to send a message and to make sure that everyone knows that we're here and that we're going to stay here and that we're going to continue to push forward. So thanks again, guys. Amazing. Yeah, one more thing. Coconut Rocks Production. Thank you so much, guys. Also a great job. These are the guys over here. Yeah. Woo! So that's it. And yeah, a big thank you, Gehan, for hosting our show. I think you've been a great host so far. So over to you. Thank you so much, guys. Let's party.
All right, give it up for Hugo Boss. And if one thing the Dutch people know, they know how to party. And with what you know. Yes, exactly. Illegal here. All right. Well, that's it from us at Explore Expanded. A big thank you to all our speakers from day 1 and day 2. I must say again that was a lot for my tiny little brain. So I'm sure each and every one of you, nerds who logged in, enjoy the sessions. We would like to thank our partners who have supported us throughout to make Explore Expanded a success. A big thank you to Hatch, Articulate, Slascom, Isaac for partnering with us to make this event a success. Also, a big shout out to the IIT Alumni Association. And, you know, my name, yes? One more thanks for Dinesha, thank you. Hugo says thank you. Late hit tagak. All right, that's it from us. My name is Gehan Block, and it has been my pleasure hosting Explore Expanded. I will see you once. Oh my God. Oh my God. We will see you once again with one of these tech conferences. Hopefully next year. Yes. Hopefully we'll have one of these tech conferences next year, if we have a country by then. Good night.